Well, good morning all, and thank you for joining the Art Tech webinar on ransomware. Hopefully you can see my screen that I am sharing. And this morning's topic is about staying safe from ransomware, how it works, and how to stay safe. And this is certainly, I think, a very relevant topic. Companies need to be discussing it. My experience, just to give you some background, is, in fact, I'm going to stop sharing just to kind of chat here. I'm a professor at Champlain College. I teach economics, finance. I also teach web development, database systems, programming, and the overarching theme, especially on the technology side, is security. No matter how good a website you have, no matter how great you build your databases, if you are not thinking security, you're doing your client a huge disservice. And ransomware is certainly a risk that companies need to be very mindful of. And part of doing a really good risk assessment is important. And with that, as we start talking about risk, I'm still going to keep this. In fact, let me come back here to my screen share. Risk is something that we are constantly assessing at Art Tech, and my role as Chief Financial Officer certainly goes beyond the financial, given my background. And again, these now have become normal business practices. My experience out there in dealing with business organization is that some have strategic plans, which are great. Some have disaster recovery plans, which is really good. For some, their disaster recovery plan is, well, when it happens, we figure it out. We're nimble. I don't know if that's really a good way to go. And in today's environment, dealing with the technology is out there and what is available to hackers and those who engage in these kind of illegal activities, companies need to be thinking about their data. How do we secure it? If we put it out on the cloud, how secure is it? If we want to keep it in-house, how secure is it, or can we make it? And there's always the financial consideration that you must always give and weigh out what is in the company's best interest. Now, fortunately at Art Tech, we can help companies get through this process. It's part of what we do. It is a really critical service that a tech company such as ours has to offer to companies. And being able to go in, do a good assessment, and come up with recommendations as to what to do. Ideally, you can just avoid it at all costs, but that's in an ideal world. So we want to be able to certainly mitigate and make sure that we recognize the risk, take proactive steps and measures to ensure that the company's data is safe. So with that, as we can see here, ransomware has definitely become one of the biggest threats, and it's costly. It's costly in a lot of ways. We saw earlier where down in the Southeast through the Carolinas, the whole disruption of fuel to that entire region, food companies being hit. And these were the more, I would say, more notable ones. So, what we want to do here is let's dive into what is ransomware? What are we talking about? And then we're going to move forward. Essentially, it is nothing more than malicious software used to encrypt data. Now, here's what's happening. I'm the person who's now going to come after your company data. And the way I'm going to come after it is I don't want to destroy it. But what I want to do, I want to make that data unavailable to your company. So now it thwarts your whole entire business process. It's a risk to your ability to service your clients, vendors, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to develop software. I'm going to infiltrate your network. And then once I've infiltrated your network, what I am going to do is to encrypt or essentially disguise your data. So if you have financial data, all of a sudden you're looking at letters, special characters, it just looks like glop. And you don't know how to get that back to good, intelligent data to use as good information for your company to do its job. And essentially what you're now in the situation of is if you can't find a methodology, if you cannot find a way to unencrypt that data, what I can do is essentially blackmail you and say, you want your data? Here's what it's going to take. You literally have to pay a ransom. Once the ransom is received, generally speaking, those involved in this type of activity will then again release your data. And again, the technical ways all of this is done, I'm going to hold off on that conversation. But essentially, I'm going to get in there, unencrypt it. Now you're good to go. And what has happened in this situation is you as a company now realize you're vulnerable, very, very vulnerable. You've just taken a huge financial hit. If this goes public, what it does to your credibility out there in the market is just, it's huge. It hurts because clients don't want to hear, well, we'll be ready next time. Oh yeah, how do I know they didn't just steal the data? How do we know that they haven't taken certain parts of the data? And the answer is you don't know. But that's what ransomware is doing. Now, your cryptocurrency is, in short, this is an untraceable form of currency. Yes, it's all the rage. That this is a whole nother topic of conversation that we can get into hopefully another time. How is it created? How does it gain value? How do you use it as you would as a medium of exchange or money? And what's its future? Interesting conversation there. Now, how frequent is ransomware attack taking place? It is estimated that every 11 seconds there is an attack. Not all attacks are successful. Not all of them are. It really depends upon the security of the network that is utilized for data transfer. It's also really dependent too on a hacker's skill to be able to get in there and encrypt your data. But it is extremely common, sadly, the attack itself. Success failure is a little different. But let me move on here. Just to talk about a particular type, we had the Revile, which attacked Cassia. Now, what this did here is that this attack on the company essentially used malware that was installed on Cassia's supported customers. So basically, quietly behind the scenes, they were able to get in there and install the software. Now, how many companies were impacted? We're looking at over 1,500 companies, and the ransom requested $70 million. Now, this is absolutely incredible. If you are successful in this kind of endeavor, one successful attack is all anyone needs. But it never stops there, because success now says, well, let me go better. Let me try better. Let me do better. And what hackers are doing out there is they're behaving very, if you will, rationally. They want to go after what we call that low-hanging fruit. If they're hitting against a network system, trying to get into data, and they are having a really tough time, generally speaking, as good business people, and I don't mean good as in moral, but I mean in being rational, a lot of time means money. They'd rather go after a network where they can easily get through, where they understand and can detect those vulnerabilities, get through, and initiate that attack. Now, the larger the company, generally speaking, the greater the ransom that you can pay. So, or you can expect to receive. So as you can see here, this is the kind of thing that it not only hurts a company financially, but its reputation out there in the market hurts. Now, what have we seen here? Well, obviously during the pandemic, some of the trends is that those who have been working in the IT field, it was an opportunity to venture forth into a whole nother area as a hacker and being specialized in the area of ransomware. A couple of popular ones that we have seen here are the SolarWinds and the WannaCry. Interesting names. And as you can see here, it remains the most prominent malware threat because it's not only easy in some cases, but it pays an immediate dividend. That's what these hackers love about it. They know they're going to see the money. Now, are there other types of, if you will, network breaches, and why do they do it? In some cases, they just want the data. And that type of malware is designed just to grab data. And in some cases, what hackers will do, they'll hold on to that data for a while and not do anything with it, such as grabbing a credit card account or a bank account, then utilizing that data later on. And the way they'll utilize it to make money is all of a sudden I go into my bank account and I see a service fee of $2.50 on my checking account. Now for $2.50, I may not blink at that. I ignore it. All right, it's a service charge first of the month, no big deal. But if you're hitting a financial company that has thousands and thousands of customers, now all of a sudden take that 250 times the 1,000. And if you're doing this the first of the month, you've just created an income stream. But notice here, you've got to be very, very careful because you don't want to get detected. The ransomware is, yeah, we're telling you, we're here, we've encrypted your data and you're screwed, pay up. And it's an immediate payoff. And the other part of this is what we're seeing is what's interesting about how ransomware is infiltrating is through something as simple as an email. You open up the email, bam, it hits your computer. And the way they will do it is that it will be in a very quiet way. And a lot of times you will see an email and it looks like it's from Microsoft. In fact, I had an email it was from a bank. Now, I don't have an account at that bank, but I was told it looked like my account had been breached and I needed to use their link to go in there and change my password. Then I looked at the URL and I was like, nah, nice try, not me. But it does happen. And when you have this type of situation where you've got the suspicious URLs, it's really going to come down to training your employees to be mindful of and what to look at. And it's so easy. A lot of times I'm going through my email. What I'm doing is rather than opening up and reading emails, I'm just going down a list and deleting. So I'd rather get yelled at because I missed somebody's email than open up an email because I'm in a hurry and all of a sudden, wham, I've now released malware on my system. And the thing is that once it's on my computer at work, it now makes the entire network, the entire business network becomes vulnerable to it. So there's a lot to do this. And, if you want more information, take a look at the webinar on phishing attacks. Definitely have seen quite an increase of that. In fact, as you can see here, 600%, quite substantial. And the ransoms have also increased. Notice from about 5,000 in 2018 to over 200,000 in 2020. Why is this happening? Because those who are involved in the activity of creating ransomware are getting better and better. They start to see here that there's a lot of money to be made, and it can be done in such a way that trying to find where's it originating from, who's responsible. Let's get law enforcement in here. Let's get them brought to justice, returning the money. The 5,000 to the 200,000 is they've just gotten better over the years. And it's like, you know what? Those networks for them that they had difficulty getting through and introducing this malware, they've gotten better at getting around a lot of security protocols. And right now you've got clandestine companies out there who basically, they're going after, the networks that they know they can break in. They make a few thousand here and there, but they've also got their team who's looking to get into those next level companies that can afford to pay a much higher ransom. So again, security, and education. A really well-educated employee on the threats of this type of malware is probably one of your best defenses, because if they don't open up that email, that malicious software cannot enter your network. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not going to try other avenues. Yes, they are, but the easiest one is through the phishing. You open up the email, maybe you mistakenly even open up the attachment, and it releases the malware. And the thing is, a lot of times people will have this happen, and the next thing you know, they have no idea that it has happened because it's contingent on the antivirus software that's on their particular system, as well as the entire network security system. So well-educated employee, very, very important. Moving on, let's take a look at some of the specific risks. I do want to get into a little detail here. The confidentiality of the data. Obviously, if you're dealing in any kind of medical field, dentist office, small, large, or indifferent, your integrity of the data. This is huge. If your data has been compromised in the sense that somehow in some way it has been changed, you no longer have good information. Data is the absolute heart, soul, it's everything to the business organization, because that's what provides, when you pull the data together into good information, that's what provides the tools for management to make good business decisions. And when that integrity is compromised, a business organization can find itself out of business. The other thing is too, the availability of that data. While your data is being held ransom, your customers don't have access to it. That is a huge problem. You as a business organization do not have access to it, which can shut a business down until this entire episode is over. Obviously, the business downtime, time is money, and costs associated with these breaches, huge. Not only is it in the ransomware, but now having to bring in the right people, you hire architect to come in, and yeah, we put together a plan, we're supporting the company, but that takes money as well. Then you have the potential repeat attack, and don't think it won't happen. It's not a one and done. If they got in once, and especially if it was through the immortal phishing email, they're going to do it again. Why not? It was easy. Let's try it again. And the other part of it is too, is that when you have business organizations paying the ransom, if you paid it once, pay it again. And if you wind up getting hit again, well, we asked for $1 million this time. Now we can ask for 2 million. You've got it. So, what we're really looking to do here is, again, your best defense is to be proactive in dealing with this. This last point, the loss of customer trust. I think this is, to me, the greatest of all the threats, because without the customer, without the customer, what do you have? And, in teaching business courses at the college, one of the things that I find for myself is I'm constantly going after students to understand the importance of the repeat customer. Without that repeat customer, what are you going to do? And when you've lost the trust of your customers, you've also lost the trust of your potential customers and the industry. You've lost the trust of your vendors, because from the vendor perspective, all right, and especially if you've got integrated systems communicating with your vendors, the first thing I would be thinking as a vendor, if your system got hit, how do I know it didn't infiltrate my system? And it raises the level of concern. So we really want to be mindful of all of these things. And again, keep your employees well-trained in all of this. It's worth it. Even if you do a once-a-year kind of training, that's fine. It's something to keep them mindful about these threats. Now, let's take a look at the ransomware cycle. What does this look like? Okay, so process is they want to go in and discover the vulnerability. The easiest one, that low-hanging fruit, is the email. They infect the target, encrypt the data, and now they demand the ransom. Now, you've got two options. If the ransom is paid, okay, return the data. But notice that there's an asterisk there. You hope that they return the data back to its original, I'll say its original state before the attack. But you can expect another attack again. It's just the way they operate. If the ransom is not paid, they're simply just going to go out there and find another target. Now, that's from the perspective of those who launch the attacks. I want to come back to that point about them returning the data. They may not return the data. And having good, secure data backup processes in place is absolutely essential. And again, in thinking through a process of how do we deal with the ransomware issue, working with a qualified organization such as Artec, we can help companies develop a plan at something that is very, very cost effective for the company, but also to ensure that if all of a sudden you've been hit, bam, we've already got the plan in place and we can ignore the ransom and now execute plan A. And it's more than just having a plan A. It's looking at a plan A, B, and C, because as good as any system is in terms of its security, the hackers are always looking to break something. And if they do break through and they discover a vulnerability, well, that's a plus, because now we can say, here's a vulnerability. Now we know what to cover. At the same time, with a really good plan in place, you can immediately shift gears. You're into plan A and you have business continuity, which is absolutely critical for the business organization. And if it gets out there that you are hit with this type of malware, what's really nice is to be out there, to be able to openly talk about it and to be able to discuss how you successfully were able to thwart the intentions of whoever or whatever organization attacked your company. It builds credibility with your customers, which is huge. It builds credibility within the industry. And again, when you understand how they like to work and you have a plan in place, I think I would have to say you sleep much better at night. I remember working on a disaster recovery plan for a business organization. And, we were looking at the threats. The more, likely and immediate threats would be things such as, a major storm, hurricane being hit, taking down power, which, very, very timely example. Other things that could hurt is that where this company was located, yes, they had summers that made them vulnerable to, hurricanes, but also to nor'easters and power lines dropping. They also happened to be on the flight path to a major airport. And all of these things were factored into their disaster recovery plan. Because one of the things that they were certainly aware of, which made it great to work with them, was the fact that to put a plan in place or to figure out how you were going to respond to a disaster after the fact put the company in a huge hole, because all the other companies who weren't thinking about it are also now trying to grab very limited resources. But when you've already got your plan in place and you've got those resources tucked away, and all you've got to do now is say, okay, here's the game plan, and we're good to go, and you're back up and running, that's huge. That is huge, because again, your business continuity, revenue flows, your ability to conduct business, even in the midst or shortly thereafter a disaster, that's huge. That is really huge for the business organization. So let me move on here. The who piece. Let's talk a bit about that. Is it individuals? Is it groups? Right now, what we are seeing here is we've got countries out there who will go nameless at this point, but understand that these countries are out there sponsoring this. At least that's the case. Trying to get down to the specifics of who it is, where they're located, can be a very challenging thing. For you as a business organization, you don't really care who is performing the attack on your business. What you care about is successfully responding to any attack that comes its way, whether it's stopping it dead in its tracks or being able to immediately go to your plan A, implementing it, and successfully maintaining your entire business process going forward. And again, with the whole concept of prevention, what does this look like? It's the layers of defense. The more layers you have, the more frustrating it is for any hacker getting through a system. They're not looking to get through 12, 15 layers of a defense that are formidable. If they can immediately skirt that, and again, the easiest way of getting around it is to just, in a very large business organization, the probabilities of having at least one employee respond, open up a phishing email is pretty good. And that's what they're counting on. Once they start hitting one obstacle after the other, unless they believe that there is a huge windfall revenue stream for them to gain from the ransom that they expect to have paid, they're not going to go with it. It's that simple. And the things that really frustrate them is when all of a sudden they think they've got your data, they hold you ransom, and you basically tell them, no, we're not paying it. Have a nice day. And your business continues on because you have a plan that you've implemented to ensure business continuity. Now, again, your user training is huge. That's for all of your employees, straight up to CEO. Do not in any way assume that, well, these employees know better. Don't. Keep it continuous throughout the organization. Updating your antivirus program, updating all of your security protocols. The network administrator plays a huge role in this piece because it's up to the network administrator to ensure that the most current, up-to-date, state-of-the-art network security protocols are in place, are working, and are protecting all the users from this type of attack, as well as making sure that the data is protected. Now, one of the things I want to address, if you're dealing out there in the cloud, a part of what you want to do, just in general, is you need to understand the security protocols and the security, if you will, practices of your cloud provider. Because if they can't provide you with a really good explanation as to how they go about protecting the data, and specifically ask them, what about ransomware attacks? What are you doing to ensure that we will not have to subject ourselves to having our data ransomed. Hold them accountable. This is really, really important. And I think one of the things that you want to ensure is that when you're doing a security audit, bullet point 3, bring them into the conversation. I would not hesitate ever to use a cloud service provider, whether it be for using software as a service, for data storage, as a backup and recovery partner. None at all, and can be a very, very cost-effective and a secure way to do business. But you need to make sure that those who are in charge of your IT infrastructure are doing the security audits, and have them report out too what's going on. Don't assume that they're doing their job and doing it well, because they have, and I'm going to talk specifically to those involved in your IT IS department. They've got a lot going on. Technology resources are just, everyone has an insatiable appetite for them. And what you need to ensure is that they have the resources to do these security audits and to do them well. Without that, if you're not going to give them that kind of support, that's where things start to fall apart. And it is in an area that no business can afford to see fall apart. Secure backups, and I mentioned this before. Whatever your data is, have a secure backup. I had a situation with a friend of the family I kept a backup of their website. And make a long story short, it had nothing to do with malware, but they could not get into the server anymore where their website was hosted. And I have a backup of it. So that really solved the problem. Having secure backups and doing your own encryption on your own data is a great way to ensure that if anything goes wrong, you can immediately get to that backup data. And again, having a plan in place is critical. The worst time to determine how you're going to respond is when it hits, because there's too much happening, too many dynamic things going on. And during a ransomware attack, company has got to understand exactly what it's doing, how it's going to do it, and who's involved and who's responsible. And if it's not in place, generally leads to rather poor results for the company. All data stored securely. Cannot stress that enough. And of course, we have, I would say that for a company where you're allowing your employees to take their laptops home, well, what if they decide that they put their data out on a Google Drive and then leave their computer at work because they don't want to be bothered with it? They rather work on their own personal computer, download the data onto their personal computer. You can see right off the bat, it's an invitation for problems right there. So making sure that you also have sound, reasonable policies that can be successfully implemented for how employees handle data is absolutely critical. Must have that. All right, preventing infection. Here's the thing, network segmentation. When we talk about network segmentation, it's like literally divide your network up into pieces so that if one part's infected, your other parts are not. Now, how do you maintain continuous communication? It's what we would call, you can base your communication on what we call on an as-need basis. So if one part of the network's got to talk to a different part of the network, you can establish that and establish it securely. Now, if you have different parts of your company located physically in different places, there's an example of a segmented network, and making sure that that data is flowing securely. That is something for IT to ensure happens. And, they're well versed in it. IT professionals today get it. We certainly at ArcTech understand it. It's something that we pride ourselves in. And as far as, how do we further support that? You've got to have secure system policies. And again, it goes back to your training and education. How do you manage data from the perspective as far down as the individual employee? What are you allowed to copy? Where are you allowed to store any data? Is there any data that you will have so secure that employees who need to have access to it, but it's impossible for them to be able to download themselves or make a copy of and take somewhere else, therefore, or thereby exposing the company to more than just ransomware. A lot of problems without good management in place with that. Access control, and I just alluded to it, who's allowed to see this data, who's allowed to go in there and not only examine the data, but potentially update data, make a copy of the data. Very, very important. And again, the secure backup. The secure backup can just be the cure for many, many, many problems, not just your ransomware, but absolutely huge. Obviously, in a disaster recovery kind of environment, a secure backup is so critical to the organization. All right. How do you respond? We've got to be able to identifying the source. Now, you may not get to the origination source, but where did it come from? There's a path that it takes, and that's your start. And that's done by IT professionals. And you've also got to make sure that when you are doing these data restorations, going to your backup systems, probably a good idea is to make sure that you have a whole infrastructure ready to take on that data. And again, I don't want to get too deep into the technical pieces of it because yes, it's going to cost money. But the point is that if you've already got a network compromised, putting data back on that compromised network could lead to further headaches down the road. And then, of course, you got to deal with the ransom. Now, again, if the response is such that the business is up and running and that locked data is now irrelevant to the company because you've already got your systems up and running, good data backup now has allowed you to restore your data and you're back in business, they allow you to just tell the ransom, those who are holding you ransom, you're not going to pay it, pure and simple. That's a great position to be in. All right, key takeaways from all of this. It's what we do at ArcTech, absolutely. But I think some of the practical things that I hope you have captured from this webinar include train your employees, make them aware of the importance of their role in securing the company data, watching out for the URLs that come through when opening up an email, to having good sound policies for all employees regarding data and they're using that data, such as keeping copies of data on their own computers or being able to take a copy of that data and move it to a non-corporate storage device. Very, very, very important. Making sure that you are doing regular security audits. Once a year may be enough. May enough. One of the other things that I like to do, if it works for a company, is to actually put out what looks like a phishing email, and it would not contain obviously any malware, but look at how many people, how many employees in that organization respond to it. What's that vulnerability look like? And part of the system audit too is, can we get through to that network? Let's discover the vulnerabilities before a hacker discovers the vulnerabilities. So with that, I thank you for your time today, and I wish you well, and I wish you much success out there. And again, feel free to call us if you have any additional questions, or if you have like to do a follow-up with us. So with that, thank you and have a great day. Bye-bye now.